This is Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Martinez.
And I'm Steve Inskeep.
Marketplace Morning Report is coming up next. And then in 10 minutes at 9 o'clock, it's the BBC NewsHour on 93.9 FM. Let's check in with London to see what they're working on. London, good morning.
Good morning, WNYC. I'm James Kamarasamy. On today's NewsHour, as President Macron visits Beijing to try to improve European ties with China, the policing of protests back home in France faces international criticism. And are we entering an era of defamation by algorithm? That's BBC NewsHour coming up at 9 on 93.9 FM, WNYC.
51 out there. It's been a foggy morning so far. We have chances of drizzle, showers, and storms today and a high of 82. Tomorrow we clear out 60, partly sunny for the Mets' rescheduled home opener. It's 8:51.
WNYC supporters include the Joyce Theater presenting the return of AIM by Kyle Abraham, featuring works by Kyle Abraham, Malik Washington, and B.B. Miller, with musical features by Jay Lynn, Kamau, and Quentin Gray, now through April 9th. Tickets at joyce.org.
Are you a WNYC monthly sustaining donor? Thank you. We know your membership is important to you, and it's important to WNYC. If your credit card was recently reissued, please take a moment to update your information online at wnyc.org/update or give us a call at 888-376-WNYC. Better yet, use your checking account and you won't have to worry about expired or replaced cards again. And thank you for helping WNYC thrive.
Now it's Facebook with the artificial intelligence.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Palo Alto Networks. Palo Alto Networks delivers what's next in cybersecurity innovation to protect today's digital way of life. Learn more at paloaltonetworks.com.
I'm David Brancaccio. Facebook's parent company Meta is getting on the ChatGPT-style bandwagon and has unveiled its own artificial intelligence tool. It is called SAM. I'll tell you what that stands for, but it doesn't really help. SAM, Segment Anything Model. Meta says it can identify objects in photos and videos. Marketplace's Nova Safo is here to please explain.
Well, David, it's actually not very easy to explain because SAM is essentially a tool for a tool. It comes from Meta's research division, and it's not quite the same as ChatGPT on Bing or Google's Bard in that it's not yet quite ready for prime time. It's not meant to be used by just anybody. I mean, you can, but it's not that user-friendly. But what Meta hopes SAM will be is a tool to help artificial intelligence systems better recognize the world, to understand the images they see, and be able to differentiate between objects and figure out what they are. And the part that Meta is excited about is this very notion that SAM, the AI tool, doesn't need to have seen or been trained on a specific object before it can recognize it. So, for example, say there's a photo of someone with a pen in their hand, and even though the SAM may have never seen a pen before, it can understand that there are two objects in the photo, a person and something they're holding. And that's the progress Meta is trumpeting.
Right, because why would Sam ever need to hold a pen? And why, Nova, roll this out before it's made to be more useful?
Well, Meta wants outside researchers to tinker with it. They're offering it as an open source technology, and the company thinks it can be used in a wide variety of applications, like biological research even. Bigger picture, though, of course, is, Meta is likely trying to stay in the conversation over generative AI. It's a bit behind. It's offered a number of tools that will be coming out, but they're not out yet. And, of course, Microsoft and Alphabet are ahead.
Nova, thank you. Dow futures are down 19 points now, less than 0.1%. S&P futures down 0.1%. NASDAQ futures down more, 0.4%. In his annual letter to shareholders this week, the CEO of the biggest of banks, Jamie Dimon, had a reminder of why we spend so much energy following the Federal Reserve's monetary policy. He compared the cost of borrowing to something like Polaris, the North Star. Quote, interest rates are extraordinarily important. They are the cosmological constant or the mathematical certainty that affects all things economic, unquote. The 10-year Constellation is in declination this morning, down at 3.29%.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Fidelity. A dedicated Fidelity advisor can help create a wealth plan for a full financial picture. More at fidelity.com/wealth. Investment minimums apply. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC.
You may have missed it during the former President Trump stuff on Tuesday, but Charlie Javis, the 31-year-old founder of a student loan startup called Frank, was arrested after being charged with fraud by federal authorities. The SEC's also filed a civil case. She denies faking the existence of millions of customers ahead of J.P. Morgan buying her startup for $175 million. Javis becomes the latest name on Forbes magazine's 30 Under 30 business leaders list to get charged with fraud. They're everywhere, says Kelly Richmond Pope, a professor of forensic accounting at DePaul University. Her new book is called Fool Me Once. Morning, Professor.
Thank you so much for having me.
Kelly, I'm not sure I want to live a family life and a work life where I can't really trust anyone, but what would you say? I need to get over that and not be a chump?
Absolutely. You're living it. You have to get over it because that is the life that you are involved in every single day.
I don't know. You have to trust some people, but you sure can't trust all people in an organization. And you've sat down with a lot of people who've really betrayed that trust.
I have. And what's interesting is what I've learned when sitting down with people is we all sort of push the envelope and push that trust envelope in the organizations that we work in. We just don't always think of ourselves as doing that.
I like how you divide up people who play roles in what I'll call the fraud industrial complex. First, there are the scheming fraudsters who have an almost or actual sociopathic mindset. But then there are people who, stumble across a possible opportunity to do the wrong thing and then do the wrong thing?
Well, yeah. So I'll admit I am a true crime lover, right? And a lot of those shows that we watch are about a category that I call in the book called intentional perpetrators. But there are these other categories that are also mentioned. Those are the accidental perpetrators and the righteous perpetrators. Any one of us could be those. And so say, for instance, your boss, your supervisor asked you to sort of turn a blind eye to something. Those are us too. And so they are just the regular, average, everyday employee that could find themselves mixed up in a fraud.
Well, you have a story in the book about it's from a bank, and then there's some cash missing. They figure it out, and the employee says, "Oh, look at that cash. That was from that other day." And what happens?
I love that story. I'm glad you brought that up because it's a great question that we all need to ask ourselves. What would you do if you found a bag of money sitting somewhere? So the story you're talking about is a teller that found a bag of money that was under a cabinet, and he had to think about, what am I going to do? He decided he was going to take the money. And he had a good time spending the money, but he had this do I take or do I tell decision-making process that he had to go through to decide, well, I'm actually going to take this money and hopefully I won't get caught and no one to find out.
So help us with some signs to watch out for in an organization. I guess like the person who has their fingers on the purse strings at the company who never ever takes a vacation, right? They're afraid someone else will sub for them and find something wrong.
Well, there's some general signs. And I think the first main one is a disregard for compliance training and ethics training. If no one really cares, no one pays attention, it's just sort of like a check the box activity, I think that's a sign because it leads to the type of culture that you might be working in. A second sign is if there are no internal controls around anybody. And I think we have to remember that internal controls are put in place to protect us all no matter where we work. So if there are no internal controls, and I think you saw or we're seeing with the FTX scandal, there were no internal controls there. That should be a red flag. If you're working in an organization like that, be careful.
Kelly Richmond Pope is a professor of forensic accounting at DePaul University in Chicago. Her new book is called Fool Me Once, Scams, Stories, and Secrets from the $1 Trillion Fraud Industry. Professor Pope, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And there's the annual list of busiest airports out. Yes, Atlanta still on top, but more newsworthy, I think, is that while passenger numbers are up 54% from pandemic 2021 to 2022, there's still 26% fewer passengers than the year prior to pandemic. Marketplace Morning Report from APM, American Public Media.